Tuesday, December 15th, advanced classes. We're going to get into our final talk about the outsiders and staying gold and all the fun little things that go into that. Notebook, I'm going to pick it up from you guys coming up this week. You can always check it on my website. There's a little tab up there that says Notebook. It has all the directions in case you have a bell work or homework that you've not done, or in case you need to double check the list. You can look on there and find out that information. Let's see. As far as the outsiders goes, let's see. We'll eventually give you guys a chance to bring up your thoughts, but to do a quick thing, let's see, to go through this one. When Johnny's in the hospital, let's back up. Why is Johnny in the hospital? Because what happened to him? What fell on him?
The ceiling.
Ceiling fell on, and what was wrong with the ceiling at the time?
It was on fire.
It was on fire. There's the good news, bad news thing. Bad news was he got third-degree burns on his body from the fire. The good news was he's paralyzed and has no feeling in his body. And so,
How is that good?
because you can't feel the pain. How could that not be good news? I mean, you're like, hey, guess what? Your entire body hurts because all your skin burnt off. How can we solve that problem? Paralyzed. Now you can't feel anything. You're like, oh, thank you, fate. And so everything's good. And so, good news, bad news. Trayson?
He isn't paralyzed for his whole body, just like from the waist down.
I think it's from, is it from the waist down?
Yeah, it's from waist down.
All right, so half of them is good to go. So problem solved. Let's see. But while he's there, his mom comes to visit him, and we get to find out what kind of relationship he has with Mama Cade, and what kind of relationship does he have with Mama Cade? Well, when she shows up, what does he request? Yeah, that she get kicked out, and he doesn't want to see her, and he's not happy about her. Knig.
Johnny's mom is an idiot.
And apparently Johnny's mom is an idiot. Why is she an idiot?
Because she's evil to Johnny.
Can you back that up with more evidence or just opinion?
Because she ignores him, and aside from her or his dad that beats him.
Beats him, and specifically they say beat him with a 2x4, and you know what a 2x4 is?
Yeah.
What?
Do you have one?
I do. You never know when you have to beat a child. And so, this would be a 2x4. So when it says that he beats him with a 2x4, that's what it is, because it's 2 inches by 4 inches. And so that's, I believe the word would be severe. So yeah, not the best of home life. So Johnny's not all that happy. But Johnny does have a family he enjoys. And who's his family he enjoys?
The gang.
Yeah, the gang. So he gets to hang out with. That becomes his family. As they tell him, Han's like, you don't have to worry about her. We're your family. And they bond and hug. They don't hug, they're boys. But still, there's bonding and they bro-fist each other and stuff like that. It's all good. After the fire, aside from Johnny, who else is in the hospital?
Dally.
Dally. Why is Dally in the hospital?
Because...
Try to save Johnny.
The saving of Johnny. He got his arm burnt, and he didn't get lucky enough to get paralyzed. And so the fact that he's still in pain and the arm burning and stuff like that, he has to stay in the hospital. When Ponyboy leaves after visiting them, then he comes back. He and Cherry get into a fight and an argument in the parking lot. What did they fight about? Do you remember them fighting and arguing when he came out? Because he wants her to do something and she refuses to do something. Cole?
He wants her to visit Johnny.
Yeah. And she refuses to do it because she's a horrible, mean person, and she says, I hate Johnny and greasers are awful.
No.
Oh, then what would be the real reason why she won't go visit him if you won't use my made-up reason? Catton?
Because she thinks that Bob is not an entirely bad person and he killed Bob.
Yeah, and so basically it comes down, she's like, I understand that Bob had issues, and Pony was like, understatement. And so she's like, but he did have some good to him. She's like, no one is completely evil. I mean, Bob was a bit of a jerk, but, I mean, we still was my boyfriend, and even though we fought at times, he had a good side. So she's like, and Johnny, did kill him. He's like, but Johnny's a good person too. She's like, exactly. I would see Johnny as being completely evil, and you would disagree. So there's two sides to people. Trayson?
Voldemort's completely evil.
At one time, that's a whole another argument, but he's not completely evil. If he was, wow, bring it down, yells a lot. If he was completely evil, he wouldn't have people follow him. The thing is, what his issue is he believes that he wants a pure race, and so he doesn't want to he's trying to get rid of weakness. His way of doing it is incorrect and wrong. I would agree, but he was based on Hitler with the whole pure race thing.
Wizard Hitler.
Fact check.
Okay. Most of the not all the Death Eaters, but most of them follow Voldemort because they are scared of him.
True.
Like
Fear.
most of them just he's evil.
That is good stuff. Jackal?
Can we just go back to the other
Thank
side?
you.
Yeah,
That's
we're
what I was
doing
gonna
that.
say.
I'm on the same thing.
Yeah.
So, aside from Voldemort and your side thing and the idea of being evil, what we have here is Bob, not completely evil, Johnny, not completely evil, but Ponyboy and what's her face? Good job. Yell at each other in the parking lot, and then she's like, hey, do you still have sunsets? And he's like, I still have sunsets. And they get to do a little bonding thing about the fact that we can still high five over sunsets, even though we disagree about, Voldemort being evil. Then they decide to have a rumble. The whole point of the rumble, what is this rumble supposed to decide for them? Let's back up. If the Greasers win this rumble, what is it that's going to happen with their win? Finley?
They get to keep their territory.
Nice one. Not only do they get to keep their territory, but it's more than just getting to keep it. Trayson, make sure your name's on it, put it on my desk.
The Sakis can't come
Socius.
Sakis.
That's a whole new name for it, go for it.
They can't come into their territory.
And that's the bigger area, the fact that the Socias will then be banned and cannot come into that area ever again. And so they're basically defending it, sort of like the American Revolution. They're like, British people can't come here no more. But much like the American Revolution, if the Socias win, what is it they get to do? Ooh.
Take the territory.
Aaliyah?
They get to hurt the Greasers all they want.
Yep, they get to come in there and do grease hunting all they want. They're like, so if we win, then it's open season on Greasy Town, and we get to come in there and hunt you down. Just like if the British had won the American Revolution, then they can keep coming in there and being all British. And so it was sort of the same idea. So they get in there and they have the big fight. Let's see. When they step up, you have the different sides who all step up to the rumble, but you have to have your representative step up. And so each side has one person step up. For the Greasy side, who steps up to fight for them, Aaliyah? Derry. Once again, not Dally. Derry, R for brother. Dally, L for loser. Derry steps up, and he's like, I'll fight. And then where they look for a Soch to step up, and what brave Soch steps up, Mohammed?
It was like this guy named like Paul or Patrick or something.
Paul is correct.
Paul.
And what connection does Paul have?
They weren't they like friends at high school or something?
They were. Paul and Derry were best friends back in high school, but then they went different directions because Derry didn't have money and the parents dying thing, and Paul does have money, so he goes off to school. So the fact they were best friends and they went different directions, and they're the ones that are going to fight each other. Trayson.
They were on the same football team.
And they were on the same football team, the whole bonding. There's a little, once again, another little bro hug in the middle, like fist bump. Except we just have bumping to the fist, they bump to the face. It's the true bro fist bump is when fist bump to the nose. And so they step up. But before they get a chance to actually begin, someone comes running in and is like, you can't start a fight without me, yo! Jackal!
Dally.
And this is the L for loser, and this is where Dally comes running in. Because where had Dally been before?
The hospital.
The hospital. And so they were just waiting. That's the problem is with Derry and Paul, neither one wanted to throw the first punch. They're just staring at each other like, you throw a punch. No, you throw a punch. And then Dally comes running in, and then who actually throws the first punch? I believe it was Paul, wasn't it? When all of a sudden they all turn to look, and Paul's like, gotcha! And gets him right in the face. And then they all start rumbling. Jackal?
Doesn't Dally threaten the nurse with the knife to get out?
He does.
Yeah.
And was it to get out? Was that to come back in?
Just to get
That was
To get out.
That was
Was
both.
it to get out and to get back in? Yeah, I mean, that's why I don't think he ever actually threatens the nurse. He got it in case they tried to stop him. But they never actually, I don't think they ever had the scene where he wiggles a knife. But he does, he's like, give me your knife in case they try to stop me. Although really it's a hospital, you just walk out. But whatever. And so they have the fight, the throwing down. In the whole big fight thing, Ponyboy is still recovering from the whole being in a fire and almost burned alive thing. But then during the fight, he falls down, and then what does one of the Socias do to him?
Kicks him in the face.
Kicks him in, well, not the face, but at least the head, maybe the face.
Well, it kicks him in the ribs and
And somewhere in the head-old region. And so nowadays we understand when you have several sharp blows that go to your head, that you're probably going to have a, yeah, and so he was was concussed on one level or another, because when you're laying there and someone's like, soccer, football, polo, and just hitting you in the head, well, he was not having a good time of it. Trayson?
Did you just say bowling?
I said polo. It's sort of the same thing. Polo. I couldn't think of another kicking one off the top of my head, so I just threw polo in there to see if kids would. Bowling or bowling. Everyone kicks bowling balls. Well, first off, who wins the whole fight between the greasers and the Socs? Greasers. Because the greasers are fighting for their lives, and the Socs are just fighting for the fun of beating people up. So the greasers have a bit more to fight for, and so they sort of throw down and manage to win and chase off all the Socs. Mo?
One guy from like another gang that's fighting with the greasers, he ends up using like a metal pipe during it.
Remember, kids are idiots. And yeah, even though they had rules about the fact that you can't show up with weapons, they did have Brumley boys, I think one of the ones like that, who showed up, and he was like, I brought weapons! And they like that. It's like even his own friends like beating up, like, you're a moron! And they were hitting him. He was like, yes, I am. And it was good for him. Trayson?
Actually, he was like punch, ooh, look, metal pole slap.
Metal pole. Everyone likes a good metal pole slap. I've used it in many of my own personal fights. And then once they get done, Dally immediately runs over and grabs Ponyboy and says, and takes him to the hospital. And why do they have to go to the hospital, Mackinac?
Because Johnny's dying.
Because Johnny's dying. He's like, we got to go. And so I'm going to jump to that scene real quick.
No, don't read it. No. Please don't.
Please have to.
I don't get why people like fried over there.
Page 147. I want to take a look at that last scene.
Am I allowed to go in my chair?
You can turtle hold here. For those of you who want to see it, it's page 147. I'm going to talk about that scene because it leads into the scene with Dally in a moment, which we need to talk about too. We ran through the lobby and crowded past people into the elevator. Several people yelled at us, I think because we were pretty racked up looking, but Dally had nothing on his mind except Johnny, and I was too mixed up to know anything that I had to follow Dally. When we finally got to Johnny's room, the doctor stopped us. I'm sorry, boys, but he's dying. We gotta see him, Dally said, and flicked out 2-bit switchblade. His voice was shaking. We're gonna see him, and if you give me any static, you'll end up on your own operating table. The doctor didn't bat an eye. You can see him, but it's because you're his friends, not because of that knife. Dally looked at him for a second, and then put the knife back in his pocket. We both went into Johnny's room, standing there for a second, getting our breath back in heavy gulps. It was awful quiet. It was scary quiet. I looked at Johnny. He was very still. For a moment, I thought in agony, he's already dead. Or too late. Dally swallowed, wiping the sweat off his upper lip. Johnny Cake? He said in a hoarse voice. Johnny? Johnny stirred weakly, then opened his eyes. Hey. We won, Dally panted. We beat the Socs. We stomped them and chased them out of our territory. Johnny didn't even try to grin at him. Useless. Fighting's no good. He was awful white. Dally licked his lips nervously. They're still writing editorials about you in the paper for being a hero and all? He was talking too fast and too calmly. Yeah, they're calling you a hero now and heroizing all the greasers, and we're all proud of you, buddy. Johnny's eyes glowed. Dally was proud of him. That was all Johnny had ever wanted. Pony boy? I barely heard him. I came closer and leaned over to hear what he was going to say. Stay gold, pony boy. Stay gold. The pillow seemed to sink a little, and Johnny died. I mean, you read about people looking peacefully asleep when they're dead, but they don't. Johnny just looked dead, like a candle with the flame gone. I tried to say something, but I couldn't make a sound. Dally swallowed and reached over to push Johnny's hair back. Never could keep that hair back. That's what you get for trying to help people, you little punk. That's what you get. Whirling suddenly, he slammed back against the wall. His face contracted in agony, and sweat streamed down his face. Dang it, Johnny, he begged, slamming one fist against the wall, hammering it to make it obey his will. Dang it, Johnny, don't die. Please don't die. And he suddenly bolted to the door and down the hall. Yeah, rough scene. I agree. But with it, Johnny's been holding on, but he does get the one thing he's been wanting. And what is the one thing he's been wanting?
Dally to be proud of him.
Yeah, to have that connection. I mean, he heroizes it. As odd as it is, they are each other's gold because, as we know, Johnny is Dally's gold, and for the long time, Dally was Johnny's gold, even though Dally should never be anyone's gold. But he was. That was who he looked up to because he was hard and tough, and Johnny had a horrible life, and he needed to be hard and tough in order to get through it. So he looked to the person that he saw as being the hardest and the toughest. But at the same time, what is his last message to Ponyboy? Even as he's seeing Dally as this great hero, he gives a completely opposite statement as his last thing. Aaliyah.
He says, "Stay gold, Tony.
Which means what?
Stay happy."
And even though he is seeing Dally as his hero, why is that an ironic thing for him to say? Fact check.
Because Dally being his hero, well, Dally is like kind of, for lack of a better term, hard.
Uh-huh.
And Ponyboy, he's telling Ponyboy to, for lack of a better term, stay soft.
Is correct. So the thing he sees as being the greatest thing at all, and he's saying, Ponyboy, don't do that. You're better than that. So even though Johnny sees the fact that Dally's life is not where you should go, he still looked up to Dally. Dally is now broken because, well, even more broken. He only had one bit of gold left, and this was his bit of gold, and his bit of gold is now gone, and he does not take that well. He, of course, leaves Ponyboy there, and how did Ponyboy get to the hospital?
Dally.
Yeah, Dally driving him, so now Ponyboy has to wander home. And another fun part of the story, how does Ponyboy get home?
And walk.
He tries to walk, but then something happens as he walks home. Trayson?
Via policeman.
No.
No.
But a good try. Mo?
Wrong.
A stranger guy finds him.
Random man pulls over and says, "Get in my car, little boy." And he goes, "Okay." And he gets in the car. In other stories, this ends completely differently. But in this one, the guy's like, "Hey, you're just wandering the streets. Get in my car." And then he just goes ahead and drives him home. He's like, "You're bleeding everywhere." And he's like, "What?" No, I don't. He's like, "Oh," and there's like blood in the car. And he gets out and just drives away and leaves him there. And he's like, "Oh, happiness." And so, random guy being good. He gets home, and all of a sudden they get a phone call. And who calls them?
Dally.
Dally. Now we got that part. And Dally calls him with information because Dally has just made a choice. Catton, what choice has Dally made?
His, okay, first of all, why did you capitalize the width in front of Dally?
Computer. That's not me.
Okay. He decides to rob a store and then bluff with his gun so that they'd shoot him.
So he robbed. What does he use to rob the store?
His gun.
His gun.
It, but it's not loaded.
Let me show you guys an example.
But no
Oh,
one knows
God.
that.
Wait, what?
Just kidding. But I figure I've had you guys on your toes so far. Might as well. And what do we know about this particular gun?
It's not loaded.
It's not loaded. Do his friends know it's not loaded?
No.
Yes.
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 Yes. He told them earlier, he was like, "I'm not stupid enough to carry bullets." He's like, "I'm stupid enough to carry a gun." Yeah, but not bullets. That's just dumb. And so he doesn't actually carry the bullets. The problem is, the shop owner doesn't know that, and neither do the police. And so he goes and holds up, what does he hold up?
Heater.
No, not the heater. What store? What a gas station? No. Liquor store? No.
It was a grocery store.
Grocery store. Thank you. Grocery store. And so he goes and points there, then he calls them. Where does he want them to meet him?
At the
In the empty lot. What time of day is it?
It's like nighttime.
Nighttime. And so the empty lot, if you're not sure what an empty lot is, for those of you in neighborhoods where they're building houses and you have a spot where a house has not been built yet, so you have house, and just an empty area, then house, that's an empty lot. It just means a spot where you could build a house, but no house has been built yet. That's just a little empty. Oftentimes they'll turn them into little parks in the neighborhood. If they don't ever sell that plot of land, they'll just make it all green, put some trees there, and be like, done. So that's where they go hang out. He's like, "Hey, meet me in the empty lot." And so they go running out. They're like, "Of course we will. We're going to go meet you." And so it's nighttime. And so Dally comes running into this empty lot with the police coming right behind him. Police pulls out his gun, Policemen show up, he has the gun the entire time. Now, when he runs into this empty lot, it's a big, open, empty, grassy area. But in this big, open, empty, grassy area, there's a very specific place he runs to. Where does he run to, Max?
Under the lamp.
Directly underneath the lamp. So he makes sure when he runs out there, he's like, empty lot, empty lot, empty street lights. And he goes directly underneath where the street light is, pulls out his gun, and then he points it at the police when they show up. The police, of course, don't know it's an empty gun. When you point a gun at police officers, they tend to do the same thing back. You're like, oh, you want to play the gun game? We can play that. And so the problem is, their gun game is a little better than his gun game. And so what do? When he pretends to shoot them, he pulls out and goes, pew, pew. With all of his friends, he sees to make sure that they are there and they witness it happening. They shoot him, and he dies. And so they shoot Dally down. Mr. Broviak, why? Why would he do such a thing? Well, why would Dally do such a thing? That is a solid question. Knigget?
He lost his gold.
So what is he
and
trying
now
to do?
he's trying to commit suicide.
And so with him trying to commit suicide, he wants to go out the toughest way possible. Because being the tough thug that he is, you can't just go commit suicide because your friend died. That is not a thuggy thing to do. You can't just say, my friend died, I'm going to jump off a bridge. So instead, he has to go out the coolest way possible. And what's the coolest way for a greaser to die?
Getting shot.
Getting shot by the police. Now the problem is, he wants his friends to understand why. Because if not, it's a pretty mean thing to do to say, hey, come watch me die. And so, which is essentially what he does. He calls his friends to make them watch him die. Because he understands, as hard as Dally is, he does have good in him. And the fact that he understands his friends also cared about Johnny. And he wants them to understand why he died. And he knows that they know that it's an unloaded gun and the fact that he's committing suicide. His fear would be that if they don't see him die this way and they just find out later that the cops shot him down, that they might try to get revenge on the cops. Dally doesn't want that. He wants them to understand why he does what he does, which is why he calls them and makes them show up and watch it. Now the problem is, as soon as it happens, what does Ponyboy do?
Crack, crack.
Yeah, he just crashes. He all of a sudden he sees Dally get shot, and Ponyboy just goes, ew, poof, and passes out right there. Then the story gets a little strange, because Ponyboy's sitting and laying up in the bed for a long time, and then we get into arguments. What you have to realize is all of this stuff that happened over the course of 7 days. From the very beginning of the story to the very, well, not the very end, but to this scene is over the course of 1 week. That is a lot to happen in a week. If you imagine, it goes from getting jumped and almost killed and getting your throat cut to going and meeting some girls at some movie theater, to then getting walked home, almost jumped again, and then getting slapped by your brother, and then getting almost drowned, waking up and finding out your best friend stabbed somebody, traveling on a train, camping out for several days, having a fire, going in the fire, saving little children, escaping from there, having a friend die, getting kicked in the head, getting a concussion, watching another guy get shot. At some point, your brain just goes, no, and shuts down. Which is what happens to Ponyboy. His brain shuts down to save him. So he passes out. Then, in order to keep him from going crazy, he has to go to a happy place. His happy place is for Johnny to be still alive. But the problem is, if Johnny is still alive, Johnny's a murderer. So Ponyboy has to keep Johnny alive and not be a murderer. But we know Bob is dead. There are only 2 people there. So if Johnny didn't kill Bob, and Ponyboy wants to keep Johnny alive and not be a murderer, who's the only other person that could have killed him? Backle? Ponyboy himself. So that's why Ponyboy begins to convince himself that Ponyboy killed Bob. When Randy shows up, and Randy has the conversation with him, and Randy's like, hey, I'm sorry about that. And he's like, no, Johnny's still alive. He's like, no. He's like, I killed Bob. He's like, no, you're in the water. Because that's how bad Ponyboy's life is. If you get to the point in your life that your happy place is you have to convince yourself that you're a murderer, that's not a happy place. That's how bad off Ponyboy. He's like, my life is so bad, let's make it happier. I killed somebody. That's a better place. That's where his place, so that's where he's gotten to. And then basically he has lost all of his gold at the end. Till we get to the very end. And he realizes he still has gold. And who is his gold? Even though Johnny has died, he still has gold in his life. And what is the gold that is still in his life at the end? Trace it. What's that? Zoo poop? Not soda pop. That is something. All right. Soda pop. And his brothers and stuff like that would still be his gold. Which is why he realizes he can't give up. Which is what he did. He was failing his classes. He was fighting with his brothers. He had given up. There was no more gold. He'd given up on ever being gold until he found the letter from Johnny. And Johnny was like, listen, you cannot turn into Dally. Which is what he was doing. He was turning into Dally. He was giving up on all of his gold. Then he realized he had to hold on to his gold. So the very last page of the story, where he decides to hold on to his gold, what do we find out he does? Muhammad.
He writes a story all about what happened.
And so that becomes the outsiders in writing the story in order to stay gold. I know you guys had questions, but I saw I was running out of time. I had to make sure I finished. That's why I had to talk over you guys. I apologize. But now if you want to talk, you're more than welcome to.
I'm gonna watch more.